I am now going to read from Title 18, United States Crimes and Criminal Procedure, Part 1 Crimes. This can be read at https://uscode.house.gov/browse.xhtml. And you can scroll down and click on Title 18 and open up Crimes and Criminal Procedure. This is from Chapter 113C for torture. Section 2340, Definitions. As used in this chapter, 1. Torture means an act committed by a person acting under the color of law, specifically intended to inflict severe physical and mental pain or suffering, other than pain or suffering incidental to lawful sanctions, upon another person within his custody or physical control. 2. Severe mental pain or suffering means the prolonged mental harm caused by or resulting from a. The intentional infliction or threatened infliction of severe physical pain or suffering, b. The administration or application or threatened administration or application of mind-altering substances or other procedures calculated to disrupt profoundly the senses or the personality, c. The threat of imminent death, or d. The threat that another person will imminently be subjected to death, severe physical pain or suffering, or the administration or application of mind-altering substances or other procedures calculated to disrupt profoundly the senses or personality. And 3. United States means the several states of the United States, the District of Columbia, and the Commonwealths, territories, and possessions of the United States. Scrolling down to statutory notes and related subsidiaries. Effective date. Here they published L 103-236, Title 5, Section 506C, April 30th, 1994, 108 Statute 464. And this clicks to show something that says that gives a further definition of, defined as either a national of the United States or present within the United States, provided that the amendment made by this section enacting this chapter shall take effect on the later of 1. The enactment of this Act, April 30th, 1994, or 2. The date on which the United States has become a party to the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment. The Convention entered into force with respect to the United States, November 20th, 1994, Treaty Doc 100-20. Now scroll down to Section 2340A, Torture. This is as a charge. A. Offense. Whoever outside the United States commits or attempts to commit torture shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 20 years, or both, and if death results to any person from conduct prohibited by this subsection, shall be punished by death or imprisoned for any terms of years or for life. B. Jurisdiction. There is jurisdiction over the activity prohibited in subsection A if 1. The alleged offender is a national of the United States, or 2. The alleged offender is present within the United States. The alleged offender is present in the United States, irrespective of the nationality of the victim or alleged offender. And it scrolls down to C. Conspiracy. A person who conspires to commit an offense under this section shall be subject to the same penalties, other than the penalty of death, as the penalties prescribed for the offense, the commission of which was the object of the conspiracy. This is for group involvement. Scroll down to Section 2340B. This is exclusive remedies. Nothing in this chapter shall be construed as precluding, meaning preventing from happening or making impossible, the application of state or local laws on the same subject, nor shall anything in this chapter be construed as creating any substantive or procedural right enforceable by law by any party in any civil proceeding. Then we scroll down further from here. So to be clear, United States law is first. I mean, the states can make laws over United States laws, but they cannot undo them. So this law is what this is saying here. And then we scroll down to statutory notes and related subsidiaries, effective date, section effective on the later of April 30th, 1994, or the date on which the United States has become a party to the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment, November 20th, 1994, See Section 506C of Published L 103-236, set out as a note under Section 2340 of this title. So the formal definition of torture per the United States is here, and it was what I was put through in public in Berkeley, California, while also being followed to San Diego, California, where that continued year, then followed back to Berkeley. After I applied and was accepted back to the university, they then continued with this there, making it very clear that I was there as a university student. They were doing this torture formally to push me out of college. Now, it fits the full definition. There's a concern that says the color of law is involved, acting under the color of law. This means that for it to count as torture, they have to be some form of official. And the concern that some of them were faculty at the university, so their role there is to work and to teach, and they are to generally be respected in that role, but that role does not involve the ability to torture students who attend the college. I need to be very serious about how this has been for me, and the concern of the abuse of science to torture a student there at the college, regardless of their personal philosophy. And then they also had students that were involved. For the students, it is the same. They don't get to do this either. They're all adults. This is not juvenile justice. They're all adults. They knew they were adults. There are adult themes involved. They knew what they were doing, and it needs to be treated fairly. So I'm now going to scroll down to the actual Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment. This is an international convention that the United States is part of, and the purpose of referencing it within the United States Code is that the United States Code itself references the International Convention. So I'm now going to read from the International Convention. And this was stated as giving entry into force 26 June 1987 in accordance with Article 27, and there's an article you can read for that. And for the United States, signature was in 1988, and then it had ratification and accession in 1994, and then it has a check mark next to declared. This is on the world map that they have agreed to as follows. Part 1, Article 1. For the purposes of this convention, the term torture means any act by which severe pain or suffering, whether physical or mental, is intentionally inflicted on a person for such purposes as obtaining from him or a third person information or confession, punishing him for an act he or a third person had committed or is suspected of having committed, or intimidating or coercing him or a third person, or for any reason based on discrimination of any kind, when such pain or suffering is inflicted by, or at the instigation of, or with the consent or acquiescence of a public official or other person acting in an official capacity. It does not include pain or suffering arising only from, inherent in, or incidental to lawful sanctions. So we read that a second time. For the purposes of this convention, the term torture means any act by which severe pain or suffering, whether physical or mental, is intentionally inflicted upon a person for such purposes as obtaining from him or a third person information or confession, punishing him for an act he or a third person has committed or is suspected of having committed, or intimidating or coercing him or a third person, or for any reason based on discrimination of any kind, when such pain or suffering is inflicted by or at the instigation of or with the consent or acquiescence of a public official or any person acting in an official capacity. And scroll down to this is 2. Part 2. This article is without prejudice to any international instrument or national legislation which does or may contain provisions of wider application. So the wording here is just that they can have a wider net for this, but not a smaller one. I'm going down to Article 2. Part 1. Each state party shall take effective legislative, administrative, judicial, or other measures to prevent acts of torture in any territory under its jurisdiction. 2. No exceptional circumstances whatsoever, whether a state of war or a threat of war, international political instability, or any other public emergency may be invoked as a justification of torture. 3. An order from a superior officer or a public authority may not be invoked as a justification of torture. Article 2 summarizes to under no condition whatsoever is this ever acceptable, and does state that this is very clearly in language. Article 4, Part 1. Each state party shall ensure that all acts of torture are offenses under its criminal law. The same shall apply to an attempt to commit torture and to an act by any person which constitutes complicity or participation in torture. 2. Each state party shall make these offenses punishable by appropriate penalties which take into account their grave nature. And then now we're going to scroll down to Article 14. 1. Each state party shall ensure in its legal system that the victim of an act of torture obtains redress and has an enforceable right to fair and adequate compensation, including the means for as full rehabilitation as possible. In the event of death, the victim as a result of an act of torture, in the event of the death of the victim as a result of an act of torture, his dependents shall be entitled to compensation. 2. Nothing in this article shall affect any right of the victim or other persons to compensation which may exist under national law. So this is very thorough here. They knew what they were doing, and there are some people in the area that need to be found. And the reasons that they're doing this fit for the full definition of torture very fully. I have been very loyal to law enforcement and have not been arrested, which should validate me very fully as having done nothing wrong. And I need people to go to jail. And the method that they used is something that is becoming more and more common in that area. I think there's regional awareness of this. Students are talking about it openly. Then it needs to be able to be approached very normally. And if they need to catch up on science and technology in order to do that, and they do need to do that, then they cannot keep it as something they don't want to deal with. They have to deal with it fairly. Under Marcy's Law, which is the California Victims' Bill of Rights, I am guaranteed money by the state of California for a couple of different charges under United States law. I am guaranteed mandatory restitution, which means if someone does that thing, then before doing that thing to the other person is owed money for it, and I am that other person. This includes stalking, for which there is no irony involved. They just were the way they were, and I have hurt no one, and that is how that is. And then also for things under Chapter 109A, which is for injuries of a sexual nature, and also money for this. And I need to make very clear that when they're doing #MeToo and everything for women, I've always been very supportive. So I need that to be there for me when I am hurt in this manner. And there needs to be full support for this. I also should be able to sue civilly. When I tried to sue civilly, I was being followed in cars. I did not tell people that I was going for a lawsuit. They were hacking my laptop, and whenever I tried to do anything helpful, they would follow me to keep me in that state and prevent it from having help. So with that being known, I'd like that at self-examine, going back up to Section 2340A for torture under C, conspiracy. I'd like to have that examined for continuation of conspiracy to keep me in a state of torture. They engaged in torture as a crime, with fear of death, because they wanted their peers to do better, and to punish me for being different and for having a different background. I need to make it very clear that there are injuries to the brain, intentional injuries to the brain that I endured that were explicitly meant to manually reduce my ability to have intelligence, to be intelligent as a man, to have emotional capacity as a man, and to have interpersonal ability as a man, in addition to other injuries. These are all explicitly felt. There's a myth that you don't feel your brain. I think that this is because you normally do not have anything to feel within your brain. It is normally protected by the skull. When there's something to feel within the brain, you do feel it within the brain. It is an organ and part of an organ system, a very vital organ system, and you do feel all of this as this was happening. This is what's happening to me. You're doing this on purpose to reduce my ability to have potential. This is not ever legal. It is a raw and inherent right of man to use what he has, to earn what he can within the world. And under no set of circumstances does a group of people get to go in there and start reducing that manually. So I have no way to be forgiving of anyone involved in this. And I have every right to demand arrests and for fair access to all forms of restitution which are available to me, not only through the criminal justice system, but through the civil system, and to not be prevented from having that. It is not acceptable to then be prevented from having that after this type of damage. I see this as a direct intent to manually keep someone, forcefully keep someone in a permanent state of poverty, as I work very hard to have what I care about in life. This affects me very deeply. I'm an intelligent person. I take pride in my being an intelligent person. I have spent my life fighting uphill battles, and I have the right to be who I am and pursue life at the best of my ability. If there is law assigned at the level of nations, an area does not get to disregard it. And they went very far out of their way to keep me being hurt. So there is a group of people that was doing this, and that group needs to be fully identified and fully held accountable. And this is a need.